You are lying in bed right now, staring at the ceiling while your exhausted brain refuses to shut up. The room is dark, the world is quiet, but inside your skull it feels like a war zone. Your thoughts keep racing faster and faster. You replay embarrassing memories from years ago. You think about unpaid bills, unfinished work, awkward conversations, strange pains in your body, and terrifying what-if scenarios that suddenly feel urgent at 2 in the morning. You have already tried everything people recommend: deep breathing exercises, meditation apps, expensive white noise machines, melatonin gummies, counting sheep. Yet the harder you try to force yourself to sleep, the more awake you become. The clock keeps moving, your anxiety keeps growing, and every passing minute feels like proof that something is wrong with you. But what if the real problem is not your body at all? What if you're accidentally keeping yourself awake without realizing it? Tonight, you're going to learn a psychological technique so effective that military pilots reportedly use versions of it to fall asleep in active combat zones surrounded by noise, stress, and chaos. Sleep researchers later studied why methods like this work so well and discovered something fascinating. The human brain cannot smoothly maintain anxious linear thinking while simultaneously performing randomized, low-intensity visualization tasks. In simple words, you can interrupt panic by confusing the mental system that feeds it. And once that system breaks, sleep arrives naturally. This is not magic. It's not fake internet pseudoscience. It's neuroscience mixed with cognitive psychology. Most people completely misunderstand sleep. They think sleep is something you achieve through effort, like solving a math equation or lifting a heavy object. But sleep is the opposite. Sleep only happens when effort disappears. The harder you try to force unconsciousness, the more alert your nervous system becomes. Psychologists sometimes call this the law of reverse effort. The desperate desire to sleep creates performance anxiety around sleep itself. Your primitive survival brain interprets wakefulness as danger. Then cortisol and adrenaline flood your bloodstream, your heart beats faster, your muscles tighten, and your nervous system shifts into survival mode. In other words, your brain starts preparing to fight a predator while you're lying safely under a blanket. That contradiction is exactly what traps millions of people in endless insomnia cycles. But here's the truly disturbing part. Modern life is destroying your brain's ability to transition into rest. Right before bed, most people flood their minds with hyperstimulation, endless short videos, flashing screens, loud sounds, doom scrolling bad news, checking emails, watching emotionally charged content. You're basically injecting digital caffeine straight into your nervous system and then wondering why your mind refuses to slow down afterward. The human brain was never designed to process thousands of emotional stimuli moments before sleep. Your nervous system needs a transition period, not a violent collision between overstimulation and silence. But even if your routine is terrible, this next technique can still interrupt the panic cycle almost immediately. The first step is radical acceptance. Stop trying to sleep. Seriously, give yourself permission to stay awake. Tell yourself that resting quietly is enough. The moment you remove the pressure to perform, your nervous system stops treating wakefulness like an emergency.
This tiny mental shift is unbelievably powerful because anxiety feeds on resistance. The more you fight wakefulness, the stronger it becomes. The second step is physical disengagement. Relax your forehead. Unclench your jaw. Let your tongue fall naturally away from the roof of your mouth. Drop your shoulders. Loosen the muscles around your eyes. Your brain constantly scans your facial muscles, searching for signs of danger. If your face is tense, your nervous system assumes something is wrong. But when those muscles soften, your vagus nerve receives a biological signal that says the environment is safe. Your body begins powering down automatically. Now comes the core technique that changes everything: cognitive shuffling. This is where you intentionally scramble your thought patterns before anxiety can organize itself into a spiral. Pick a completely neutral word like bedtime. Start with the first letter, B. Now imagine random objects beginning with that letter. A basketball bouncing across a floor, a brown bear walking through snow, a bright blue bicycle, a loaf of bread, a broken bottle. Visualize each image for only a second before moving to another. Then move to the next letter, E. An elephant, an envelope, an eagle flying through clouds, an empty elevator. Then continue, D. A dusty desk, a dark doorway, a barking dog, a drum rolling downstairs. The images should feel random, meaningless, disconnected, almost dreamlike. That is exactly the point. Your anxious brain depends on organized thought chains. Worry needs structure, it needs continuity. Cognitive shuffling destroys that continuity by flooding working memory with harmless nonsense. And something fascinating begins to happen. Your thoughts slowly stop behaving like waking thoughts and start behaving like dreaming thoughts, random, illogical, fragmented. Your brain recognizes this exact mental pattern as the transition into sleep. Heart rate slows, muscles loosen, stress chemistry decreases, conscious focus fades. You drift naturally towards unconsciousness without forcing anything. That is why this technique feels almost strangely powerful the first time it works. It feels less like trying to sleep and more like accidentally falling into sleep before you even realize it is happening. So the next time you are trapped awake at 2 in the morning, staring into darkness while your thoughts spiral out of control, stop fighting your own mind. Do not check the clock. Do not panic about tomorrow. Accept the wakefulness. Relax your body. Scramble your thoughts into meaningless imagery and allow your nervous system to remember what it was designed to do naturally. Because sleep was never supposed to be a battle. And once your brain finally feels safe again, unconsciousness arrives quietly on its own. For most of human history, night was dangerous. Human beings did not sleep inside locked homes with soft mattresses and temperature-controlled rooms. Our ancestors slept outside in forests, caves, and open landscapes filled with predators, harsh weather, and uncertainty. Darkness was not peaceful. Darkness meant vulnerability. If ancient humans completely shut down the second they lay down to rest, they would not have survived long enough to pass on their genes. So evolution built a survival mechanism deep inside the human nervous system. Before sleep, the brain enters a state of increased awareness, quietly scanning the environment for danger. Every sound, movement, or unusual feeling becomes important. That system kept our ancestors alive for hundreds of thousands of years. The problem is that your ancient brain cannot fully distinguish between physical danger and psychological stress. To your nervous system, a work deadline, financial anxiety, relationship problems, loneliness, or fear of failure can feel just as threatening as a predator hiding outside a cave. Your body reacts the same way. Stress hormones increase, your heart becomes more alert, your thoughts accelerate. The brain believes it is protecting you by keeping you awake. That is why forcing yourself to sleep almost never works. In fact, the harder you try, the worse the problem often becomes. One of the biggest mistakes people make at night is trying to completely empty their minds. They command themselves to stop thinking. But the human brain does not respond well to forced mental control. Psychologist Daniel Wegner demonstrated this through a famous experiment. Participants were told not to think about a white bear. Almost immediately, the image of the white bear became impossible to ignore. The brain continuously monitors the exact thought you are trying to avoid. Psychologists call this the ironic rebound effect. The harder you fight a thought, the stronger and more persistent it becomes. This is exactly what happens when you lie in bed desperately trying to fall asleep. The moment you think, "I need to sleep right now," your brain interprets sleep as a task that must be solved. Your nervous system becomes more alert, stress increases, your attention locks on to every passing thought. Suddenly, you become trapped in a cycle where the fear of staying awake becomes the very thing keeping you awake. But researchers studying sleep discovered something fascinating about the exact moment the brain transitions from wakefulness into sleep. Right before people lose consciousness, the mind naturally begins producing random, disconnected images and meaningless fragments of thought. A bicycle, a dog, a floating cloud, a spoon, a random face. These strange mental snapshots are part of the brain's natural process of drifting into sleep. During this stage, the mind slowly stops focusing on organized logical thinking and begins moving toward dreamlike activity. Cognitive scientist Luc Baudouin realized that people might be able to intentionally imitate this process. He developed a technique called cognitive shuffling, a simple mental exercise designed to reduce nighttime overthinking by recreating the scattered mental patterns that naturally occur before sleep. The method sounds almost too simple to work, When you lie down tonight, instead of trying to force your mind to become silent, choose a random letter of the alphabet. Let's say the letter C. Slowly picture emotional neutral objects that begin with that letter. A candle, a carrot, a camera, a castle. Spend only a few seconds visualizing each image before moving to another. Then move to the next letter. M, an envelope, an eagle flying through clouds, an empty elevator. Then continue. D, a dusty desk, a dark doorway, a barking dog, a drum rolling downstairs. The images should feel random, meaningless, disconnected, almost dreamlike. That is exactly the point. Your anxious brain depends on organized thought chains. Worry needs structure, it needs continuity. Cognitive shuffling destroys that continuity by flooding working memory with harmless nonsense. And something fascinating begins to happen. Your thoughts slowly stop behaving like waking thoughts and start behaving like dreaming thoughts. Random, illogical, fragmented. Your brain recognizes this exact mental pattern as the transition into sleep. Heart rate slows, muscles loosen, stress chemistry decreases, conscious focus fades. You drift naturally towards unconsciousness without forcing anything. That is why this technique feels almost strangely powerful the first time it works. It feels less like trying to sleep and more like accidentally falling into sleep before you even realize it is happening. So the next time you are trapped awake at 2 in the morning, staring into darkness while your thoughts spiral out of control, stop fighting your own mind. Do not check the clock. Do not panic about tomorrow. Accept the wakefulness. Relax your body. Scramble your thoughts into meaningless imagery and allow your nervous system to remember what it was designed to do naturally. Because sleep was never supposed to be a battle. And once your brain finally feels safe again, unconsciousness arrives quietly on its own.